This is Matt Shomo, and you're listening to UC3P. Welcome to UC3P, the University of Chicago Public Policy Podcasts. My name is David Raban, and I'm the production manager for what we like to call the main page. Today, it's only our second episode of the season, but we have a big one for you. Democratic presidential candidate Marianne Williamson. Before running for president, Marianne Williamson wrote multiple New York Times bestsellers, and she's been an activist for decades. In addition, she co-founded Project Angel Food, a nonprofit that helped victims of HIV/AIDS by serving meals. Marianne Williamson is well known in the Democratic primary for supporting reparations. She's also advocated for novel policy prescriptions, such as creating a Department of Peace and also creating a Department of Children and Youth. We spoke with Ms. Williamson 2 weeks ago. When we spoke with her, it was soon after the president's scandal with Ukraine and just before the October Democratic debate. Before we get into the interview, I should note that UC3P is a nonpartisan organization. We do not endorse any political candidates, and we're planning to speak with all of them. Now, without further ado, here's Democratic presidential candidate Marianne Williamson.
Hello and welcome to the University of Chicago Public Policy Podcast. My name is Alec MacMillen.
And I'm Aishwarya Kumar.
And today we are joined in studio by activist, author, and Democratic presidential candidate Marianne Williamson. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
So how was your Yom Kippur?
My Yom Kippur was a little hungry.
Sure.
It was meaningful. The Kol Nidre service that I attended was in Charleston, South Carolina, where I think the oldest synagogue in the United States is there, although the synagogue was under some reconstruction and I was elsewhere, but it was a very meaningful, very beautiful service, actually.
Good to hear.
So how are you enjoying Chicago so far?
Well, I haven't had much chance to actually be outside to do much outside enjoyment, but I've spent enough time in Chicago throughout my life that I know this is a fun city. I've enjoyed it. It's beautiful. And my father grew up in Rock Island, Illinois, so I have relatives in Chicago and in Rock Island.
So what else will you be doing while you're here?
A lot of this kind of thing. Talking to various people, talking to media, talking to voters, and on Sunday morning I do a talk at the Christ Universal Temple. You know, I'm running for president, so every moment is about reaching voters, about talking to people, using this platform to have as meaningful conversation as I possibly can with the people of the United States.
So on that note, I think we would love to jump straight into some current events. So this week, President Trump announced the withdrawal of American troops from Syria. And you have indicated that you disagree with this decision. So can you talk a little bit about why that is?
I think public policy should be aligned with integrity and character, just like individual behavior should be. And I believe that the abandonment of the Kurds in this situation, in addition to being strategically stupid, is very wrong, morally wrong. These people have fought next to us. They have been promised that we would not do this. I don't have anything to say about it that a lot of people haven't already said. What country is going to feel that we are a trustworthy ally in the future if this is what we do to our allies, if we break our promises? It's interesting because when you watch and read coverage of this, you rarely see retired military as distraught as they are about this. In addition to that, the president's comments about the fact that, if a bunch of ISIS fighters become refugees in Europe, that's Europe's problem. It's so wrong to all those who have given their lives so valiantly for us to do things pretty much knowingly that means all their efforts were in vain.
And to expand on that a little bit more generally, how do you distinguish between necessary military engagement abroad and unnecessary foreign intervention?
If something is a threat to your own homeland, if something is a threat to one of your allies, or if something is a threat to the world order, then there is, to me, reason for military intervention, or certainly reasonable consideration of such. None of those things were true in our invasion of the Iraq War. And I think that we all need to remember also how much of the mess in the Middle East is at least indirectly a result of American foreign policy. A lot of these people who are so, bring them home, bring them home. Where were you when we went over there to begin with? So of course I want to bring the troops home. I mean, who among us really doesn't? But how we do that matters. How we do that matters. For instance, when we were negotiating with the Taliban to bring troops home from Afghanistan, which unfortunately blew up literally as well as figuratively, one of the things that I wanted to see there factored into the negotiation was the rights of Afghani women. So it's not just in life, whether it's foreign policy, domestic policy, or personal behavior. It's not just what you do, it's how you do it.
And the last thing I'll ask about this before I pass it to Aishwarya for our next topic is how specifically would your proposed Department of Peace function, maybe specifically in this situation in Syria and then more broadly outside of that as well?
I don't know how much it would have to do with what's going on in Syria.
Sure.
Because the Department of Peace has to do with prevention of conflict. It certainly has to do with the amelioration of conflict. It has to do with boosting the societal immune system, as it were. What's happening in Syria is once the sickness is already in the hands of the doctors. But the Department of Peace, what I want for the Department of Peace is that it have a coordinative function to begin with. We already have many people working within the State Department, for instance. Also, there's the Independent Institute of Peace, U.S. Institute of Peace. And also there are so many NGOs, so many organizations that are peace builders. I think the first thing is the recognition of respect that is due the peace builders. Because peace building skill and expertise is every bit as sophisticated, and in some cases of the world where it's carried out, takes just as much courage as military expertise. So for me, the head of the USAID, for instance, would have a seat at the table. It's all about who has a seat at the table. So a lot of times it's things that already exist, but that are underfunded and basically have no real say. They're just told what you can have and what you can do, as opposed to really factoring in peace building in our national security strategy.
So it's a more collaborative approach amongst the existing government agencies that act in this space, and then also potentially new agencies that would have new functions.
Well, I'm sure they collaborate as much as possible. It's more coordinative than collaborative. I mean, I would assume the collaboration exists where it can, but definitely coordination. And collaborative in the sense that, as I said, I don't think that the peace builders have been given a real seat at the table. They haven't really been asked to collaborate. They've been asked for input. They've been thrown a few dollars here and a few dollars there. But, for instance, if you're talking about the greatest humanitarian refugee crisis that we've had since World War II, that is not factored in to our actual national defense strategy the way it should be. Desperate people, large groups of desperate people, should be seen as a national security risk. It's just like with medicine. If you're going to treat your body terribly, if you're not going to take care of your exercise, not going to take care of your diet, not going to take care of your lifestyle, why should you be surprised later if sickness occurs, which it almost inevitably will? Same with war and peace. If we're not actually handling the issues that actually create a greater possibility for people to live in peace, for people to thrive, for communities to sustain themselves, then why should we be surprised that conflict arises? And then you have to deal with the deeper corruption and immorality here, which is that to sociopathic economic forces, that's okay too, because so much money is to be made on the conflict. That's how deep and dirty and dark and corrupt this is. That's why I'm running for president.
One of the criticisms of the presidential debates, especially on the Democratic side this cycle, is that the format sometimes does not allow for candidates to respond fully to questions. So we would like to ask some questions directly from the debates so you get a chance to give the American people a more nuanced response. So what would you do to help people get the skills they need to adapt to this new world where jobs are being replaced by automation?
I agree with Andrew Yang that we should have a $1,000 a month universal basic income. The automation tsunami is on its way. 9 states in the United States, for instance, the main industry is trucking. So if somebody's had a career as a trucker for decades, what is that person supposed to do when trucking becomes driverless trucks? So we absolutely must deal with the fact that the level of economic despair that is inevitable given this situation must be assuaged. We need a massive infusion of economic hope and opportunity into the life of the average American. That's why I want universal health care, Medicare for all type system. That's why I want to cancel all the college loans. That's why I want to have free college at state colleges and universities. We need a massive infusion. Now, we can talk about the fact that job training. A lot of people love to talk about job training. Well, on one hand, we should have job training, but then on the other hand, the statistics are pretty abysmal. Because if you just train people for new jobs, but then you don't have jobs for them, then really how much good does that do? All of which has to do with the fact that we need not only further funding for higher education, but also for technical schools. And also not only for technical schools for people who are young people, but for at every age. This is we need a massive shift in the direction of helping people repair their lives so that we can have the kind of growth of opportunity without which it simply will not occur, no matter what we talk about, no matter what little policy here or policy there we talk about as a Band-Aid on this broken aorta.
You have also said you believe undocumented immigrants should be covered under a government-run healthcare plan. How do you propose to make that happen and make it practical?
We need to end an aberrational chapter in our history and begin a new one. I think a lot of people don't realize that Ronald Reagan gave 8 million people amnesty. Let's just pave a way for citizenship for everyone who is here. If they have not committed a crime against a serious crime against a citizen of the United States, if they have not done a serious transgression against the laws of the United States, they're here. Let's start over. Then let's repair the situation so that we have more judges, we have more agents, we have more technology, we have more open ports. Also, of course, we have to address the humanitarian emergency that we have with this current situation at the border. But let's let people I always say, all 4 of my grandparents came over, escaping persecution in Russia. They came through Ellis Island. If you're not descended from an African slave that was brought here, or if you're not descended from a Native American whose people were here for thousands of years before the European settler even got here, who do you think you are? What God-given? I believe that this country has been blessed, but I believe you experience blessing to the extent to which you give blessing. That's why blessings have rained on this country. We're messing with our own blessings by being so mean-spirited and closed-hearted towards immigrants today. So yes, do I believe if I see a 4-year-old who has leukemia, first of all, I think it's outrageous that treatment is withheld from that child. But then you're going to say to me, oops, no, he wasn't born here. He's undocumented, so we're going to withhold treatment for the leukemia of the 4-year-old? No, that is immoral. And we need a season of moral repair. The season of moral disrepair has gone on long enough.
So I have to ask you about the 2 big I's, the first being impeachment, given what's going on in the news recently. So recently on September 24th, you released a statement where you announced your support for impeachment, and even though you had previously been hesitant to do so. So I'd like to know what changed and what you hope comes of the impeachment inquiry.
Well, I withheld a statement on this for the obvious reasons. Politically, it's fraught. But this Ukraine situation has gone so far that at a certain point we're not doing our own constitutional duties. Every citizen has a constitutional duty. And we must weigh in. And how far does the lawlessness of this administration get to go before the people of the United States say, no, this must stop? And that is why I say I support the inquiries, which I do. And unfortunately, it seems to be getting worse every day. So that's what that's about. And none of that is to guarantee that, as a presidential candidate, none of that is to guarantee that this will make things better for us. This could go all kinds of ways, which may or may not make things better in a purely political sense for the Democratic nominee next year.
And so I just want to follow up before I move to Iowa on impeachment. There are people who say, even if the House impeaches Donald Trump and the trial moves to the Senate, a Republican-controlled Senate will never convict and remove Trump from office. Do you believe that's the case? And if so, is there still merit to an impeachment inquiry if it necessarily won't end in removal?
I believed that 4 months ago. I'm not sure I believe it today, because there are Republican senators